Reading through the Bible in 1 year, June 23rd, Deuteronomy 31 through 31:13, Psalm 77, Isaiah 47:1 through 48:11, and Matthew 24:1 through 28. And when all these things come upon you, the blessing and the curse, note God is telling them what's going to happen. Right? He's not saying, and if all these come upon you. He's saying when they come upon you, because they certainly will. Which I have set before you, and you call them to mind among the nations where the Lord your God has driven you, and return to the Lord your God. You and your children, and obey his voice in all that I command you today, with all your heart and with all your soul. Then the Lord will restore your fortunes and have mercy on you all. And he will gather you again from the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. A couple things to note here. First, God is the one who's driving them away. And it's terrible. We're going to read about this as it comes later on in the year. But bad things happen. These people come in to kill and destroy, and they, many people are killed with the same three things as reported by all the different prophets, by famine, by pestilence, and by the sword. And this is how they're killed. And this is what happens to the ones who don't listen to the call to just go when they first ask, to just go to Babylon. Those who listen to the call of the Lord and go and don't try to trust in themselves or their king or their army or anything else to defend them, if they just go into captivity, they actually have it pretty good. And then they live in captivity for a while, and then they come back out after 70 years. But for the rest of them, it gets bad. And this is what God, their God, has done to them because they have abandoned God. Now, with that in mind, what comes next? What happens to the person who abandons God, who utterly walks away from him, who lives in abject idolatry for generations? God completely disassociates himself, right? Washes his hands, he's done with them. That's it. No. What remains for them is what remains for us. Repentance. That's what we see here. When these things come upon you, the blessing, but also the curse. And part of that curse is God driving them into the hands of their enemies, where they live for 70 years, right? And return to the Lord your God, you and your children, and obey his voice in all that I command you today, with all your heart and all your soul. This is called repentance. This is called forsaking your sin, turning from it, and serving God instead. Understanding that he doesn't have to forgive you. He has no right or obligation to do so. You're appealing yourself to his mercy. You're asking him to be the one who opens it up for you. Again, he doesn't have to do any of these things. It's entirely up to him. And when you fall on him for mercy, that's typically when he turns around, when he pulls you back out. And we see that because then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have mercy on you. And he will gather you again from all the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. If you are outcasts or in the uttermost parts of heaven, from there the Lord your God will gather you, and from there he will take you. And the Lord your God will bring you into the land that your fathers possessed, that you may possess it. And he will make you more prosperous and numerous than your fathers. We see this at the end of Joel, in Joel chapter 3, where God has driven them totally away, but he tells them the exact same thing. And he is going to restore to them more than what they had in the beginning. We see the same thing with Job. At the end of Job, he ends up with more stuff than he had to begin with. It's just a blessing from God. We don't do it to get the blessing. It just comes along with it. And he will make you, oh yeah, I said that one. And the Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your offspring, so that you will love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, that you may live. And the Lord your God will put all these curses on your foes and enemies who persecuted you. And shall again obey the voice of the Lord, and you shall again obey the voice of the Lord and keep all his commandments that I command you today. And the Lord your God will make you abundantly prosperous in all the work of your hand. In the fruit of the womb, in the fruit of your womb, and in the fruit of your cattle, and the fruit of your ground. These are the three things that we were shown at the very beginning of the blessings. And the very first things that he cut off in the curses. For the Lord will again take delight in prospering you, as he took delight in your fathers, when you obey the voice of the Lord your God, to keep his commandments and his statutes that are written in the book of this law, when you turn to the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. For this commandment that I command you today is not too hard for you, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven that you should say, who will ascend to heaven for us and bring it down to us that we may hear and do it? Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will go over the sea for us and bring it to us that we may hear it and do it? But the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart so that you can do it. The in your heart basically means that it's on their conscience. They know God's law. They know his commandments. He's telling them just do it. Now, again, we know from Romans that the law was created so that we could see that we are not in and of ourselves worthy, that we don't have the ability to keep all of these things on our own merit, that we don't have the mental or spiritual fortitude to just suck it up and go and be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect. We don't because we can't. But that doesn't change the fact of what's being done here. We see here that what he's saying is, it is on you to try to do these things. I'm looking for the spot to see if there's any notes, but I don't happen to see one. When the heart is circumcised, see the note on verse 6, up here, and the Lord will circumcise your heart and the heart of your offspring, right? This is a key promise in Deuteronomy, looking forward to genuine covenant participation. This is God changing them, changing their hearts so that they can serve him. Christianese, we call that they're part of the elect. They've been converted. All right, let's go on. See, I have set before you today life and good, death and evil. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you today, by loving the Lord your God, by walking in his ways, and by keeping his commandments and his statutes and his rules, then you shall live and multiply, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to take possession of it. But if your heart turns away, and you will not hear, will not, basically meaning that they are choosing not to hear, instead pursuing themselves and their own desires, but are drawn away to worship other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall surely perish. You shall not live long in the land that you are going over the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that you and your offspring may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying his voice and holding fast to him. For he is your life. No, not doing. Holding fast to God. He is your life and length of days. That you may dwell in the land that the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them. So Moses continued to speak these words to all Israel. And he said to them, I am 120 years old today. I am no longer able to go out and to come in. The Lord has said to me, you shall not go over this Jordan. The Lord your God himself will go over before you. He will destroy these nations before you, so that you shall dispossess them. And Joshua will go over at your head, as the Lord has spoken. And the Lord will do to them as he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, and to into their land when he destroyed them. And the Lord will give them over to you, and you shall do to them according to the whole commandment that I have commanded you. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. Jesus said the same thing to the apostles. Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and courageous, for you shall go with this people into the land that the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you shall put them in possession of it. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. Then Moses wrote this law and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and to all the elders of Israel. And Moses commanded them at the end of every 7 years, at the set time in the year of release, at the Feast of Booths, which also is the Feast of Tents, when they're supposed to go over all the things that happened to them in the desert or in the wilderness, right? When all Israel comes to appear before the Lord your God at the place that he will choose, you shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, men, women, and little ones, and the sojourner within your towns, that they may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God, and be careful to do all the words of this law. And that their children, who have not known it, may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God, as long as you live in the land that you are going over the Jordan to possess. Now, Psalm 77. In the day of trouble, I seek the Lord. I cry aloud to God, and he will hear me. In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. In the night, my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. When I remember God, I moan. When I meditate, my spirit faints. Selah. You hold my eyelids open. I am troubled so that I cannot speak. I consider the days of old, the years long ago. I said, let me remember my song in the night. Let me meditate in my heart. Then my spirit made a diligent search. Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love forever ceased? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? Selah. Then I said, I will appeal to the years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your wonders of old. I will ponder all your work and meditate on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is like our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have made known your might among the peoples. You, with your arm, redeemed your people, the children of Jacob and Joseph. Selah. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. Indeed, the deep trembled. The clouds poured out water. The skies gave forth thunder. Your arrows flashed on every side. Lightning. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind. Your lightnings lighted up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the great waters, yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Now Isaiah 47, 1 through 48, 11. The humiliation of Babylon. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For you shall no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstone and grind flour. Put off your veil. Strip off your robe, uncover your legs, pass through the rivers. Your nakedness shall be uncovered, and your disgrace shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will spare no one. Our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, is the Holy One of Israel. Sit in silence, and go into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no more be called the mistress of kingdoms. I was angry with my people. I profaned my heritage. I gave them, he's talking about Israel here, well, Israel and, both kingdoms, the northern and southern kingdom, Israel and Judah. I gave them into your hand, and you showed them no mercy. On the aged, you made your yoke exceedingly heavy. Again, this is what happened at the end of Deuteronomy 28. These are these curses that were put on the people. This is the full vent of God's wrath against them before they repented and came back to him. And now God is saying what he's going to do to the people who attacked the people of Israel. Even though God had them do it, even though it was God's plan for them to do so, they still will not go unpunished. You said, I shall be mistress forever, so that you did not lay these things to heart or remember their end. Now therefore hear this, you lover of pleasures, who sit securely, who say in your heart, I am, and there is no one besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, or know the loss of children. These two things shall come to you in a moment. In one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon you in full measure, in spite of your many sorceries and the great power of your enchantments. You felt secure in your wickedness. You said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge led you astray, and you said in your heart, I am, and there is I am, and there is no one besides me. But evil shall come upon you, which you will not know how to charm away. Disaster shall fall upon you, for which you will not be able to atone, and ruin shall come upon you suddenly, of which you know nothing. What is he bringing to them? Evil, disaster, and ruin. That's what they brought upon everyone else that they came to. Stand fast in your enchantments and your many sorceries, with which you have labored from your youth. Perhaps you may be able to succeed. Perhaps you may inspire terror. You are wearied with your many counsels. Let them stand forth and save you. Those who divide the heavens, who gaze at the stars, who at the new moons make known what shall come upon you. Behold, they are like stubble. The fire consumes them. They cannot deliver themselves from the power of the flame. No coal for warming oneself is this, no fire to sit before. Such to you are those with whom you have labored, who have done business with you from your youth. They wander about, each in his own direction. There is no one to save you. Israel refined for God's glory. Hear this, O house of Jacob, who are called by the name of Israel, who came from the waters of Judah, who swear by the name of the Lord and confess the God of Israel, but not in truth or right. These are like people today who say that they're a Christian, but they're just kind of a traditional Christian. They're Christmas and Easter Christians, as opposed to other people that we know that are wedding and funeral Christians, where they literally only darken the door of a church if, they're being dragged along by somebody else. These are people who, Eastern Europe is filled with them. They go to their church services, they give to the church, they do all the things that they're supposed to do so that they can enter heaven. But their heart isn't in it. Their desire isn't in it. They aren't trusting in God. They're trusting in their riches. They're trusting in their government. They're trusting in their own intellect to save them from things. When some sort of calamity falls upon them, they don't immediately turn to God in repentance and ask for help. They turn to friends or family, or again, the local government to be the thing to save them. This is who he's talking to. The ones who claim to be the people of Israel, but their heart is far from him. For they call themselves after the holy city. Right? They say, well, we were from Jerusalem. And stay themselves on the God of Israel. The Lord of hosts is his name. The former things I declared of old. They went out from my mouth, and I announced them. Then suddenly I did them, and they came to pass. Because I know that you are obstinate, and your neck is an iron sinew, and your forehead is brass. They refuse to listen. They refuse to open their heart to things, and they refuse to acknowledge the things of God. I declared them to you from of old. Before they came to pass, I announced them to you, lest you should say, my idol did them, or my carved image and my metal image commanded them. You have heard. Now see all this. And will you not declare it? From this time forth, I announce to you new things, hidden things that you have not known. They are created now, not long ago. Before today, you have never heard of them, lest you should say, I knew them. You have never heard. You have never known. From of old your ear has not been opened. For I knew that you would surely deal treacherously, and that from before birth you were called a rebel. For my name's sake I defer my anger. For the sake of my praise I restrain it for you, that I may not cut you off. Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tried you in the furnace of affliction. For my own sake, I do it. For how should my name be profaned? My glory I will not give to another. I love these statements from God. I just do. Okay. So let's go to Matthew 24. Yes. The signs of the end of the age. This is kind of broken into a couple different sections. There's another section that comes afterward. And then we go into a bit more detail. It's the entire chapter 24 that covers this stuff. But today we're only going to go through half of that. So tomorrow when we go back through it, we're going to roll back a little bit to go into more of this. So Jesus left the temple and was going away, when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. But he answered them, you see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. That literally happened in 70 AD. There's a pile of giant stones at the base of the Temple Mount, and you can go up and see them. Those giant stones were the foundation of the temple of God that were thrown down in the Roman rebellion. From of old, he's declared these things so that we won't say that our gods did it, that our idols made these things take place. As he sat down on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Note, that's two questions. That when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming? That's kind of all together. That's one question. The second one is, and when will be the end of the age? That's two different things, so he answers them in two different ways. And Jesus answered them, see that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place. But the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains. I'm reading the note on this. Now this note goes through this whole little section. Wars, earthquakes, and persecutions and false prophets are all signs of Jesus' coming, but they indicate only the certainty of judgment, not its timing. Such signs characterize the entire period between his resurrection and his coming in judgment. Knowing when Jesus will return might lead his disciples to laziness and laxity in their watchfulness. The when, in verse 3, that Jesus gives is task-oriented. It is after the gospel has been preached to the nations by his disciples. There's another note over here. I am scrolling up. And this is the ESV Study Bible notes on this. Such cataclysmic events will be a regular part of this age until the return of Jesus to redeem all of creation. And the birth pains line indicates that there will be a time of suffering prior to the Messianic age. Old Testament prophets use the metaphor to depict terrible sufferings in general, as well as suffering that Israel will endure prior to her deliverance. All right, let's go on. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake. For why? For the sake of Jesus. Not because they're jerks, not because they cause trouble. It's because they're aligned with Christ. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. Sounds like Christian Twitter to me. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, now this is specifically talking about what happened in 70 AD. This happened just before the destruction of Jerusalem. Then let those who are those who are in Judah flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what's in his house, and let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas, for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants on those days. Pray that your flight might not be in the winter or on a Sabbath, for then there will be great great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, and no, will never be. If those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. So this is where he shifts from talking about what's happening in 70 AD to what's happening now. I mean, not specifically now, but at the end of the age. Then if anyone says to you, look, here's the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. What's the implication? It's not possible to lead astray the elect. God will keep us to him. See, I have told you beforehand, same not exact wording, but it's the exact theme that's being said in Isaiah that we just read. He tells us about it before it happens, so that when it does come, we can go, this is what he was talking about. So, if they say to you, look, he's in the wilderness, don't go out. If they say, look, he's in the inner rooms, don't believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. It's basically saying you're not going to miss it. And there's a lot of people today who will still say, oh, well, Jesus has already come. This is called the preterist view, saying that Jesus came during the siege on Jerusalem. Don't believe it. Because if he did, we wouldn't be here today. Where the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. This line gets confusing, so I can just read the note on this because a lot of people struggle with it. I'm going to read both the Reformed Study Bible and the ESV Study Bible notes. So let's do the first one first. The proverb may reinforce the announcement that Jesus' second coming will be public and unmistakable, or, since the word vultures can also refer to eagles, which also eat carrion, an emblem of the Roman Empire, it may mean that the convergence of Roman troops on Jerusalem and its temple will signal the death of a covenant people who have refused their Messiah and the transfer of God's kingdom to a new international Israel, read Romans 9, that fulfills all the old covenant people. That fulfills all that the old covenant people were supposed to be. Now for the ESV Study Bible notes. It seems best not to overinterpret this striking proverbial expression. It probably means simply that just as people from far away could see vultures circling high in the air, Christ's return and judgment will be visible and predictable. A similar view is that the vultures suggest the widespread death that will accompany the return of Christ to judge those who have rejected the kingdom. In either case, it will be impossible for people not to see and recognize the return of Christ. Now, reading it in context, the second explanation from the ESV Study Bible seems to make sense, given its placement next to this other line that says, "For as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." So reading with this reinterpreted version, it would basically mean no one will be able to miss what is happening. Right? However, the Reformed Study Bible does have a good note there that basically when these vultures, these eagles, gather together, that's where the corpse is. That's the final death knell for the Old Covenant community. What did God say about Jerusalem? That is the place where he's going to make his name dwell. That is the heart of the spiritual Israel. That is where his temple was, where he lived and dwelled among the people in his Shekinah glory, sitting above the Ark of the Covenant. That is where atonement was made for Israel on Yom Kippur. That is where all these things happened and took place. And since that time, yeah, there's Israel today. It is a shadow of what it originally was. The slate was wiped clean when the Temple Mount was cleansed by the Roman soldiers. So yeah, I could easily see that referring to this corpse, that is the final death blow to the Old Covenant church. I'll let you figure it out on your own. That said, behold, the word of the Lord.